Hello, my name is Laurel Rutledge. I am the CEO of LaurelRutledge.com, the creator of the Rutledge Perspective podcast, and now I am the host of the Rutledge Perspective on KCOH-TV, The Boost, and I am so excited. My background in human resources and also in business and consulting has given me the opportunity to share information with all of you, and what we're going to do is talk about the foundational pieces, whether or not you're building a business or you're building a career. It all comes down to strategy and people. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know who needs to be on your team? So please join me, join in the conversation, catch the show both on the radio, on the app, and also on Facebook. And I will be on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to seeing you there.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Talk It Out Tuesday on the Rutledge Perspective. I'm so glad y'all are here. I love me a Tuesday. And today, I love it even more because it's also voting day in Texas. It is the primary runoff election. I already voted this morning. Good morning, Houston. I already voted this morning and it was uneventful, which was great. So please go out and vote. I think a lot of people voted early, which is beautiful. Good morning, Lena. A lot of people voted early, which was beautiful, beautiful. So I'm hoping that the fact that my line was really short this morning, now it was 7 o'clock too, and folks are staying home and all that kind of stuff. So I'm believing that people are going to vote. So our runoff is today. Runoff election is today. And the Alabama has a state runoff today, and Maine has a state runoff today. So if you are in Alabama or you are in Maine, make sure you also are voting. Do not let anyone take your vote. Make sure you are voting. And Jerry's going to go vote after the show. Yeah. Because we talked about that this morning. So we always make sure we vote. You know, normally I vote early. But some years I want to be in the mix. I want to be on voting day. And I'm kind of irritated. I got my sticker. I forgot to put my sticker on. But I got my vote pin that my trainer gave me. But I normally get my sticker, but I wanted one that was English and I wanted one that was in Spanish, and I only had English at my place. But I got it. I always get my voting sticker. So don't forget to vote. Also, you still have time to fill out the census. Please, please, please do your census. It is important that we do that so that we are represented appropriately. Please, 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 please fill out your census. Good morning, Atlanta. I'm glad you're there, Stevie, because what I'm talking about today started with what you sent me over the weekend. So now here's something, along with the public service announcements, here's something I need y'all to watch out for. So my good friend Jennifer, who lives in Oklahoma, posted yesterday that she got a notice from the unemployment office that someone had filed unemployment. Jennifer doesn't have any employees. None. So someone who is not only not working for her, but that she doesn't even know, filed for unemployment against her business. So I'm telling you that to say, you know, there's a lot going on. Yes, people are strapped, and if we're getting ready to go back on lockdown, it's going to be bad again and all that kind of stuff. But there are also people who just like to do bad. They just like to do bad. So if you are a business owner and you are getting unemployment filings or unemployment claims, number one, make sure you check your mail more often than I do, because I don't check my mail that often. Make sure you're checking your mail. Make sure you pay attention to the date on that letter, because you only have, I think it's 10 days from the date of the letter to respond. And be sure, especially if you don't have any employees, nobody should be claiming unemployment against your business. You don't have any employees, so you shouldn't be paying unemployment for people. So she's going to be able to fight it and all that kind of stuff, and it should be rectified. But it also could be a case of identity theft, because who knows if this person is a real person? Who knows if somebody else took that person's identity and filed? You just don't know. So especially now, with so many people being out of work and the expanded unemployment payments right now, at least for now, it's possible that people are trying to manipulate the system. So be sure that you're paying attention to that. Business owners, be sure you are paying attention to that. If you are big enough to have an HR team or HR people, make sure they're paying attention too, because, you know, folks are interesting. So but especially if you don't have any employees, make sure you respond to that quick, because folks are, there are no words. So right now, unemployment benefits are still expanded for a little bit. They've been talking about how they're going to cut that off, where you can get a gap payment. There's additional payments, the $600 a month or whatever it is. But there's more and more movement to eliminate the additional payment or the additional support. So you need to keep your eyes open for that. If you are currently getting unemployment, the other thing that happened in Texas, they put it in place and then they reversed it again. So when they expanded unemployment as a result of COVID, the Texas Workforce Commission, Texas Unemployment, eliminated the need to continue to look for a job to get unemployment. That used to be a requirement for getting unemployment payments. You had to be actively looking for other employment. And they eliminated that for COVID. A couple weeks ago, before our cases started rising here in Texas, there was an announcement that the Workforce Commission was about to eliminate that pass, and you were now going to be required to be actively looking for a job again. And then I think it was last week when all of this stuff really started pumping up again, that they put it back in place and said, no, right now you're still not going to have to look for something actively in order to get your unemployment benefits, mainly because, people are either shutting back down or not opening or what have you. So please pay attention. Remember the things that we told you to follow. You want to follow the cdc.gov, you want to follow dol.gov, you want to follow eeoc.gov, and you want to follow osha.gov. You want to make sure you're following those agencies and those organizations. You also want to look at the Texas Workforce Commission. Make sure you're following those agencies so you understand directly from them what the rules are and what you have to follow in order to be compliant. And as Adrienne has said a couple of times, if you're about to make a decision based on something you saw, it's a really good idea to just screen print that page and put it in your files. Date it, make sure the date comes off the computer when you print out something from the internet. Often, especially from the web, it has the date and the location and the web address and all that on the printout. Make sure you keep that, especially the date. Put it in your file. Here's the decision I made on this date, and it was based on this information I got on this date. So it's just a good idea to keep that. Okay, so those are the public service announcements for right now. And I still forgot to check and see if we were going to have actual census workers out and about. I promise I will do that, y'all. I will remember. It just keeps slipping my mind. Okay, so let's get in today. Today we are going to be talking about something we've talked about a little bit before, but something happened over the weekend that really brought it to the forefront for me. And that is about aligning your words and your actions, especially in leadership. And so we have seen over this last many months, over this last many years, the impact of poor leadership and the impact that it has on the people that need to be led, the impact that it has on policies, on organizations, etc. And not just political leadership, but we've seen a lot of leadership that has been questionable at best. And it's really important to understand that a part of leadership is building trust. And one of the ways you build trust is to ensure that what you say and what you do match. Because people will listen to your words, but they will pay attention and believe your behavior. What is it Maya Angelou said? People will reveal themselves to you early, believe them the first time.
Yep.
Okay? That's about behavior. That's about behavior. So here's what happened. And that's why, Stevie, I'm glad you're on the show. So I don't know if y'all heard, so all these bands are starting to change their names, right? So the Dixie Chicks is now the Chicks. Well, the latest one that changed its name was Lady Antebellum, the country band. And they decided that the word antebellum was problematic for a number of reasons. And we all know what antebellum stands for and what it represents and all that kind of stuff. And when they first announced they were changing the name, their words said, we chose this name because it was representative of the house that we first met in when we first recorded our music. That was the antebellum architecture style. But over time, we have realized the connotations of antebellum, blah, 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 right? So all the right words to say, we're now woke. We know this is wrong. We know it's bad connotation. And so we're going to change our name. But unlike the Dixie Chicks, they didn't do a complete name change or just drop antebellum. They decided to go to a name, Lady A. Well, it just so happens that there's another artist who uses the name Lady A. And they started in negotiations for the name usage and all this kind of stuff. The artist asked for, I think it was $10 million, half of which was going to be used to promote other artists of color. And so Lady Antebellum, so the band decided, yeah, we don't want to pay that money. So they put out a statement of how the artist was asking too much money. It wasn't appropriate. So negotiations had broken down, blah, blah, blah. But in the meantime, they went ahead and completely rebranded. So they started using Lady A on all of their platforms. Now, full disclosure, they do have a trademark. Mm-hmm. But as my attorney tells me all the time, and as he responded to a bunch of people who were arguing with him, which is always humorous to argue with him, mm-hmm. Just because you have the trademark does not negate the fact that someone else may have had first use and be able to prove and demonstrate first commercial use. And so this person has been using this name, Lady A, in some articles it says about 20 years, and other articles it says about 30 years. But the person is an artist, is a musician. But here's the thing. So to give you all that backstory, right? So now they were suing. The artist finally came back and said, you know what? I've been working too hard. I've worked too hard. I'm going to fight for this. I don't know how much it's going to cost me, but I'm not going to just roll over. Here's the rub. Lady Antebellum, we're changing our name because it's just not appropriate. We understand all these social equity issues. We understand the connotations of antebellum and what it means for the oppression of Black people. We get it. That's not who we are. That's not where our hearts are, blah, 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 blah. Oh, but by the way, we're going to sue this artist. And guess what? She happens to be a Black woman, jazz artist. We're going to sue her to take her name. And it's all economics. So until we get it twisted, it's all about economics, right? But here's the thing. Some of their fans were irritated and gone because they changed their name from Antebellum. So all of those folks that are still the same ones, I'm sure, that are upset about Confederate flag, Confederate monuments, and all that kind of stuff are upset because they're changing their name from Lady Antebellum. So they probably lost them. Then you got the other folks who didn't know who they were in the first place and are like, well, now we'll never buy their music. So they lost them. And then you got the folks in the middle who are like, woo, this really sounds not good. And I'm not so sure. And I bought their music. I may go to a concert, but I don't know. I'll have to see how this plays out. So from a perspective of leadership, you now have words that are contrary to action, and the impact is now on their reputation. Who are they really? Do they really want to change the name from Lady Antebellum because it no longer represents who they are? Or was that a jump on the bandwagon type of situation because everybody else is supposed to be woke now too? And so if we keep Antebellum, we're not as woke as the other people. And so we got to catch up. So we're going to change our name. Which one is it? Because your words say we get it and we want to rectify it, but your actions say, yeah, but this artist who happens to be a Black female, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if we take her business, doesn't matter if we take her name, doesn't matter if we erase her from all the platforms, because now if you look up Lady A, you get mostly Lady Antebellum, and you have to dig to get and the artist's name is Anita White. You have to dig to get to her stuff, and it's good, by the way. So when you're looking at as you're trying to lead, whether you're leading a business, whether you are just an individual contributor, you're working on your career, you're dealing with colleagues, that disconnect between what you tell people and how you actually show up and how you behave, not only can erode trust, but it completely undermines your credibility. Yeah. Completely undermines your credibility, because people are going to pay attention to what you do. Most of the time, they don't even care what you say. And here's what happens from an organization perspective that I think people don't understand. You hear companies talk a lot about, here's our processes, here's our policies. What they don't talk about is all of the, like the ghost practices, right? All of the things that are happening behind the scenes that are the informal ways in which people are hired, or the informal ways people are put on projects, or the informal ways people are promoted or connect. Because those things develop, those informal networks, those informal processes, that true culture of how operations really work is formed by people responding to behavior. It's not formed by the policy you wrote and the emails that you put out and the postings that you put on the wall. It's formed by how you treat people. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if you are an organization, and I've worked in a few of these, that is like innovate, innovate, innovate. We want people to be creative. We're okay if people fail. You're going to make mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you're not making decisions. All that lip service, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's a big project. The people on the project make a decision. The decision costs the company millions of dollars. And their response is to A, take the people off the project, B, publicly shame the people that made the mistake, and or C, fire somebody who made the mistake. So the words have said, we want innovation. We want you to be creative. If you're not making mistakes, you're not making decisions. This is how we move. This is how we grow. Yet your behavior said, ooh, we don't tolerate making mistakes. It's not okay for you to cost us any money. And I'm not talking about stuff that's egregious. I'm not talking about intentionally costing money. I'm talking about doing what your job is supposed to do, doing the best you can with the information that you have, and then being punished for the outcomes. Mm. So what happens is people stop asking questions. They stop making decisions. So when you go into an organization and you see that the people are masterful at pushing decisions up, like you see the vice presidents, the directors, the senior level managers, they're the ones making all the decisions. It's because somewhere in that culture, the rest of the people in the organization learned that, man, if I make a decision, I stick my neck out there, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get punished, I'm going to get demoted, they're going to take my bonus. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep pushing the decision up. Which means you wind up with bottlenecks. You wind up with people who are making decisions with limited information because they're not the boots on the ground. Or they're pushing through a decision that's their opinion as opposed to data driven. Because they've created a culture that says, we don't really mean that we want you to make mistakes. We don't really mean that we want you to have an opinion. We don't really mean that we want you to be innovative and creative and move fast and be quick and approximate versus slow and precise. We don't really mean that. Because if you do that, we're going to have to find a way to hurt you. Because you've hurt our business. Because it's more important. The economic impact is more important to us than the impact on the person.
What if you mean that you want them to be innovative and creative, but there's still guidelines to their innovation and their creation?
Absolutely. So when you stick those guidelines in place and say, here, and I like to call them guardrails, right? Here's your upper limit, here's your lower limit. So it is okay if, for example, you have this really big project and you say, hey, we've never done this before. We want people to be really creative. We want to figure out how to do something different. And that project that you've budgeted $10 million for ends up costing you 14. Mm-hmm. It is one thing if you set out in the beginning to say, look, our budget is 10. We may have a little bit of wiggle room, but you need to tell me early if things are going down. Mm-hmm. And if the people have done that and said, hey, it looks like we're going to be running over, but here's what's costing that. That's a very different proposition than people saying, uh-oh, now we're at the end. We ran over by $4 million. We never said anything because we were afraid to. Mm. Right? So the leaders have to set up the parameters in the beginning. They have to do that. You have to set up guardrails, right? You can do anything you need to within these parameters. That's okay. Mm-hmm. And if something goes wrong, you need to let me know. Let me know early so we can pivot, right? We can make adjustments. It's even okay in that circumstance to say, you know what? Here's what our goals were. We didn't meet the goal. So instead of a 100% bonus, we're going to get a 75% bonus or whatever. And it's okay if somebody really, really, truly craters a project on purpose or out of, they're incompetent or what have you, to move people out, to move them around. I'm not saying you can't make those decisions. What I'm saying is, if every time someone makes a mistake, if every time someone is on a project or booted off a project, it comes back to you have not communicated clearly around what your expectations were. All you've done is said, no, we really want great, we want innovative, we want creative, we want you guys to have freedom to operate. And then when they do that, because you haven't put clarity around it, you fire them or you some way hurt them or some way punish them. Your actions have said that's not what we really want. What we really want is conformity. What we really want is the status quo. What we really want is things to operate the same way they've always operated, even though we're going to expect something different. See, that's the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And I would say most organizations are operating with a level of insanity. They want innovation, they want creativity, they want people to do things on the cutting edge, and yet their fear of failure is a problem. One of the things that came up when I was traveling to Shanghai, one of the things you notice in China is they are very quick. They don't have any problem being very quick to fail. They will stick something in the marketplace very fast and keep it moving. If it doesn't work, you go back and redo it. In the US, we have a tendency, because we tend to be fairly litigious as well, we have a tendency to want everything to be perfect before we even put it out there, before anybody even looks at it. That means we are much slower, right? That means other people get to the market before we do. Even if you look at entrepreneurs, the folks that are tending to make lots of money are the ones who are willing to take the most risk and just get it out there. If it fails, it fails. Keep it moving. But we have a tendency to want things to be perfect. And most organizations, especially the bigger they get, the more shareholders they get, right? The higher the stock climbs, the more pressure there is from investors, the more risk averse they become, the more fearful they become, because then, our stock price is going to drop. The investors are going to go. We may have a hostile, investor that wants to take over. There's all kinds of stuff that's happening that is telling people, no, we say we want to be creative and innovative, but what we really want to do is make sure we don't lose any money. Those two don't always go hand in hand. Innovation and creativity always has some risk associated with it, and most of the time has some kind of loss, economic loss associated with it. But the whole point is that you understand what that loss is, so you understand what the return is on the back end. It's about planning. What have I said before? Proper prior planning prevents poor performance.
Right.
Plan. When you put your budget together, put squeeze in that budget. I don't say pad your budget, but put some wiggle room in the budget, because something is going to happen. Something's always going to happen. And if your budget is so tight that you can't allow for something to happen, you have set yourself up for failure. That was me, sorry. You've set yourself up for failure. So try to do something different. Make sure that as you are setting something up, that your words and your actions match, because your folks are going to believe what you do. They're going to start blowing off what you say, especially if they're not connected. And that begins to erode trust and credibility. And as they say, trust comes in on a Greyhound, but it goes out on a Maserati. So it can take you forever to build trust, but it can take you a hot second to lose it.
Right.
A hot second to lose it.
I had this conversation. I had someone doing something for me the other day that I'm working on. I'm not saying too much about it, but I signed off on what they showed me. I signed off. But when it came back, it wasn't what I signed off on. And I said, what is this? Oh, I changed that and I just fixed this, but that's not what I signed off on. And they would have had to spend thousands of dollars to fix it. They said they wanted to surprise me. You can't surprise me when I paid for it. And this is not the time for me, I'm trying to see if I was wrong for that, to use your creativity.
Right.
Because if I'm the creator, you can't go and use your creativity on what I signed off of already, because now it's no longer what I created. It's what you created. Yeah. And so how do you handle that kind of situation? What will happen was something that the people did wrong. So it was a good thing. I said, you got saved on that. Right. You won't have to reimburse me because they made a mistake. And so it's something they have to do. Right. So when is it not a time? Because you have to build trust, because I said, I have a team of people who do what you wanted to surprise me in doing. Right. And the reason they're my team is because they know what I want. Exactly. And even then they make executive decisions, but they often line up with what I want. And I've given them, because they know you. Exactly. No, I think it's a really good question, Jerry, because especially when you're talking about something like that, if you've done your creative process and I have now signed off on it, the creative process in many cases is now ended. Right. It's ended. So we've agreed to what the final thing is going to be. So any future adjustments from that, at a minimum, need a phone call or another sign off. Hey, you know what? I know you signed off on this, but here's one thing I think I just want to run it by you before we do anything. Right? So it is perfectly okay to say, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. You're going to have to go fix that. Or
this is a performance problem because we had a sign off, we were agreed, and then you changed it at the last minute. It's okay to have some really difficult conversations around that, and some very focused conversations. Remember, it's not unkind to be clear.
Right.
It's okay to do that because you guys have gotten to a certain level of understanding that says we had the creative process and now we're done because we now know what we're going to do. We're all agreed to that. So that's different than saying, I want you to be creative, I want you to be creative, and every time somebody brings something, you're like, no. I know you really wanted, it was creative and you added purple, but I only want black and white. But go find something, go make it really nice. And they come back again and it's black and white, but it's like round instead of square. Well, I really like really sharp edges. So, yeah, that's not going to work. Well, see, what you're telling people is just tell me what you want.
And you have to be careful about telling people who want to be creative.
Yes.
Because I like to see that you are creative before I just flippantly say that. Because their level of creativity may not be your level, but if you've already looked at what they've done and know they have the capability of being creative, I think that's a win-win situation because they can see something that you probably couldn't see and enhance what you have.
Exactly.
But I don't throw that out lightly. Be creative if you haven't really seen it.
And I tell people all the time, as you're looking for team and building team, if part of your team is a creative process, that's the power and the beauty of interviewing and sourcing structures and sourcing processes. If you are hiring architects or you're hiring artists or you're hiring writers or you're hiring any kind of creative, it is okay to ask for a portfolio. If you're hiring an architect, if you're hiring a designer, maybe part of your process is, here's a room. Design that for me. Here's the parameters of the design. Tell me what you would do. Bring it back to me tomorrow or whatever.
Right.
So you're exactly right. If you're going to have people that are creative and you want to understand how they create, make that part of your process. And then we've talked about this awareness before, you as an owner, as a leader, as the person who's asking for the work, also need to be really clear. Do you really want the person to be creative or do you want what you want? Because if you want what you want, you need to tell people what you want. Right? You need to tell people what you want. If you want purple stripes and green dots and you want it to look like a heart, then you need to tell people that. Now you may say, I don't care what size it is. I don't care if it's a regular heart or like an abstract heart. That doesn't matter, but it's got to be a heart. It's got to be purple stripes. It's got to be green dots. Okay. Then they can work with that. But if you say, I just need something that symbolizes love that's really colorful, then you can't be mad if they come back with something that is red and orange and blue and green and everything except your favorite colors. And maybe it's a picture of a star instead of a heart. Because all you said was, I want it colorful and I want it to symbolize love. Well, that might symbolize love to them. Maybe they're really into astrological signs and, stars in the heavens mean love to them. So you as a leader need to make sure that you are aware, one, of what you want, and two, that you are communicating clearly what it is you want, how you want it, when you want it, setting those expectations, so that the people who are working for you can be aligned with your words and your actions. Because if you ask for one thing and you reward or punish something different, or that very thing you asked for, that's a problem. I want you to just think of something and just bring it to me. And then when they bring it to you, all you do is redline everything. Yeah, they're not going to do that again.
Yeah, because my graphic person will send me something twice. They'll send me what I asked for and what they thought was nice. And 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh, I like that. But then make sure they send me what I first asked for.
And see what's awesome about that? I want y'all to all hear that. That's about learning who you're working for and managing up. That person is managing Jerry. And I can say that because I got folks who manage me too. Right? Because the person has learned, here's what she says she wanted, and I'm always going to deliver to her what she said she wanted. Because she's got a clear vision.
Yeah.
It's not like she doesn't know. And if she doesn't know, she's going to tell me, I don't know, but I kind of think this, right? So if she's really clear, I'm going to deliver that. But that doesn't mean I may not have other ideas. So I'm going to deliver both and let her make a decision.
Yes.
That is masterful. Masterful, because they've saved time.
It is save time. And it's always 99% of the time I go with what they show me.
Exactly. And not only have you instilled trust in them, they trust you to know, you know what, if I deliver to Jerry what she asked for,
right,
and I can still be creative, I just have to be creative on the side, and she is going to give me the opportunity by looking at both.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to give both things a chance, but I have to deliver to her what she asked me for in order for her mind to be open to something different.
Because in the mind of the leader, I do believe that if you don't do that, you can almost assume somebody's going to hijack
exactly
what you're doing. And
yeah.
I've had that happen before,
right.
where you've made it totally not what
right.
this was about.
Right.
So is that wrong to think that way? Because you do have, it has to be a trust factor there.
There has to be a trust factor. And by that person doing that for you, they now trust you because you've demonstrated to them that if they do that,
yeah,
you're good to go. You know, you'll have that conversation. And you have additional trust in them because you know they heard you and they're going to deliver what you asked them to deliver. You're not going to have to run behind them. You're not going to have to go like this other person you said and say, that isn't even close to what I said.
Yeah.
Right? So there is this mutual trust in that relationship that says, you guys can probably start being even more creative, and the person can be more creative with you because they can deliver what you wanted, and then they can be all out of the box creative on the other side, but they know enough about what you wanted to have it somehow tie and connect. Yeah. It's not completely different, but at least shows you, here's what you wanted, but here's a way we can maybe tweak it to make it even better.
Yes.
And you still have the right to say no, because that's not where my vision was, but at least that person has an opportunity to be creative, and you have an opportunity to get what you need.
That's good.
Right? And here's the other piece of that that's really important that we've talked about as well. As I said, it is not unkind to be clear. Leaders, you got to be clear about what you want. If you truly have a vision, because many times, and I'm guilty of this as well, I know what I want, I know where I'm going, but I can sometimes have conversations with me and think I've had them out loud. Because, you know, I'll respond to me.
Oh, wow.
And so if you are not clear that you've had the conversation with people, that people understand where you're going and why and what that should look like, then don't be upset when they don't get it. So when someone brings something back to you the first time, not in your situation where you've actually signed off and had a conversation, but if you've asked for something, somebody brings it back to you and it's way off, before you just get really irritated, pause a minute as the leader and say, okay, now, was I clear in what I asked? Because this is not even close to what I thought I asked for. But let me make sure that I was clear. So at least do some level of ownership of the communication process.
And I had to do that. Because I know that my level of disturb was showing.
Right?
And so I had to turn around and say, but I do like this.
Yeah.
I do like this, but here's the deal. We've never worked together before.
Yes, right.
And I should have told you, as a writer, I don't want anything changed because when I write a script, it's what I want.
Exactly.
And so you need to know that about me.
Exactly.
So don't, unless you tell me you're going to do it and we decide to do it, never change my writing on what I meant to say.
That's a perfect
and so,
example.
Yeah, so, and then it was a applicable meeting, and then we were able to really sit down because I didn't want to destroy them.
Right. Right.
Because of their creativity, but I want them to know, don't do that again.
Right. Don't do that no more. Well, and here's the other thing. When you're starting to have the conversations around creativity, especially when you're early in the relationship around it, it's always good to have the conversation and end the conversation about saying, okay, now explain back to me what you think I want.
Make me understand.
Help me understand what you heard me say. And most of the time, I've been pleasantly surprised. But there have been a few times I'm like, woo! Clearly, I am not on my communication game today. But it's a really good practice for you on both sides. It's a really good practice for you as the leader who's asking for something. Now tell me what you think I want. Let's make sure we're both clear. It's really good when you're on the other side of that, delivering the work to say, okay, now before we end, let me repeat to you or tell you what I understand so that I can go off and work and we're not disconnected. That's just about a mature professional relationship. That's just about making sure communication is clear. That's just about making sure that we're all on the same page, because If you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you're going to have time to do it over?
Ooh.
Okay?
Ooh.
I'm just saying. My dad used to tell us that all the time. If you don't have time to do it right the first time, what makes you think you'll have time to do it over?
That's good.
Pause and have the conversation.
I had to have that conversation because you can tell when somebody's really not listening to what you want.
Yes.
And they have it already made up in their mind what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get it back, it's still what they wanted to do.
Right.
So,
Right.
again, you said if you don't have the time to
Right.
get it right the first time.
And that's all about planning too. I mean, all of this ties in together. What are you trying to do? What is your timeline? What is your strategy? Why are you doing it? Do you know why you're doing it? Because if you don't know why, how are you going to explain it to somebody else? And a lot of times, even if people don't agree, if they understand why, they can at least do what you need them to do. Because they understand why it's being done. Most of the time when you have a disconnect, it's because people don't understand why. They don't understand why. They don't understand how it connects. They don't understand any of that. They understand the what, but when the why is all confused, the what gets all jacked up. Every time. Every single time. Because there's no tie or connection to how the what impacts everything else that goes on. And I don't care if you're making journal entries or you're taking out the trash or you're building a building. If you don't understand how the what connects to the why, it's going to get off kilter at some point. Every single time. Every single time. I've not had it not once not get off kilter. Because the investment in the what is so much more surface level. Well, I just did it because you told me to. That's what you said you wanted. I don't know why we did it. That's just what they said. Really? Because see, when people act like that and feel like that and have that level of ownership, that means that they are not invested in detail. They're not invested in quality. They're not invested in timeliness. And not that they're bad people. This is a behavior issue. This is not a personal characteristic assassination. It is a behavioral issue. And if people can't tie their what to a why, the what doesn't really matter. The what doesn't matter. Because the why is not clear. So it'll be that, well, just tell me what you want me to do. When you hear that, something has broken down. Whether you're leading or it's a colleague. If you have a colleague that you're working with on a project and finally say, well, you know what, whatever you want to do, just tell me what you want to do. They have now disconnected. They have disengaged. Yeah. They're done. And it's all on you. It goes well, it's all on you. It goes bad, it's all on you. Like, well, you know what? They didn't have our input and I don't know why they did that. That's what you get. That's what you get. So you've got to find a way to communicate with people and treat people in the same way you communicate with them. Understand what you want, communicate what you want, and then reward what you say you wanted. Because if you reward something different, the something different is what you're going to get. Because you're teaching people that what you really want is what you rewarded. What is that saying? What gets measured gets done. If you're measuring something different than what you asked for, people are going to do what you measure. And the most important stuff may be the stuff you're not measuring. But if you're not measuring that, they're not going to do that. They're going to do the stuff that gets measured because that is impacting their performance, that impacts their bonus, that impacts what they believe is the safety and security of their position. They're going to do the things that for them feel like they're connected to their security. So when your words and your actions don't align, people are going to act according to your actions. Your words don't matter. In fact, if it's really misaligned, what starts happening is, okay, yeah, no, I know what they said, but here's what we're going to do. And we're going to do this because this, this, and this. And what happens is every time their because is true, it reinforces the fact that whatever you say doesn't matter and people stop listening to you. They stop listening to you. They've already decided what you really mean and they act on that. And every time their decision is correct, they continue to do it. Every time. Because they're avoiding pain. None of us want to be in pain.
Right.
And it's painful for somebody to come back to you and say, oh, that's not what I wanted. That was bad. How could you do that? are you insane? That's not what I wanted. That's painful. So people are going to do the stuff that eliminates pain, that minimizes risk. Now, if you are an individual contributor, if you're not leading, and you don't have to be formally leading people to be a leader, but if you are an individual in your career, building a business, whatever, this misalignment is not so much about trust, although there is some of that as well, but it's very much about credibility. Very much about credibility. Because if you say you're going to respond to something and you don't, or you say, hey, I'll get that to you in 24 hours and it's 48 or 36 or 72, and you do that over and over and over again, what people end up doing is backing up the timeline. Because your ability to respond timely, you're no longer credible, at least in that arena. A key example of that is budgets in organizations. And that whole budgeting process and all of that at year end when you're trying to put together your plans for the next year. And most accounting organizations and finance organizations say, okay, we need you to put your budget in. Everybody puts their budget in. And then they come back and they say, okay, that's great. So glad you guys did it. You did it on time. It's clear. We need everybody to cut by 15%. So then everybody screams and yells and, oh my God, my budget was what I needed it to be. And they cut by 15%. Well, we're not going to be able to do this because you cut our budget. If that happens year over year over year over year, put your budget together, cut it. Put your budget together, cut it. Put your budget together, cut it. And there's no real conversation about why. And there's no real trust in the rest of the organization. Just do a budget that's real. That's why you get padded budgets. Okay, every year I have to do my budget. But every year they come back and they make me cut at least by 10 or 15%. So I'm going to pad my budget by 15% so that when they tell me to cut it, I get back to the budget I really want. And when every department does that, that's why you end up with budgets that year over year climb 10, 15, 20, 30% falsely, because people are padding their budget because you're going to make them cut it. So in my team, I always said, look, we're doing baseline budgeting. We're going to zero-based budgeting. We're going to build from the bottom up. Here is what we need. So that when they come back to me and say we need to cut your budget, I've got all of the detail. And I can say, okay, fine. But here's all the things that we will not be doing this year if you cut this amount of money. And I'm okay with that. But I need to make sure you're okay with that and I'm getting documented so that way I don't have to say I told you so. Because I never like to say I told you so. And if you're having the right communication, the right conversation, you don't have to say I told you so. And then I go back and I make a plan and tell the team and say, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to realign. But if, on those same lines, if I'm the only person in my organization that is building a true budget, then that just makes me bitter towards everybody else.
Yeah.
Because even if they cut their 10 or 15%, they're still getting what they really want. But I followed the rules. So again, actions and words being misaligned. Because I know that the finance people know who's padding their budget and who's not. So if you're okay with some departments and not okay with others, you are telling people how to behave. You're telling people how to behave. You're telling them how they need to interact with you.
It makes me think of the press secretary. Is she the press secretary?
Oh, yeah.
I don't like her. But she's good. You know, I was looking at her and I said, oh my God. She is wrong, but she's good at her wrong.
Right?
She's
confident.
She's confident in her wrong.
Oh, yes.
But she's emulating her leader. And she can do it without missing a beat.
Yes. Yeah.
How does that happen?
Yeah, if you just kind of step away from what she's actually saying, it's like, oh, that's masterful. That was really masterful, right? But it's a good example because you see that in organizations too.
Yeah.
And as you begin to build your business, don't be that press secretary. Be real, be honest. And if you're wrong, you're wrong.
Because there now is a separation with the one that wanted to be honest.
Right.
But it's being said that there is no problem. So this is really what you're talking about. There's integrity there.
Yes.
Your actions are not lining up with what you're saying that you want.
Right. Actions speak louder than words. We learned that, in kindergarten?
In kindergarten.
Actions speak louder than words. People will listen to what you say, but they will believe what you do. They will believe what you do. It's just like kids. Every time you take them to the doctor when they're little, you're like, we're just going to have a checkup. And every time they go get a shot, they're not believing that anymore.
No.
They know that every time they get in the car and they show up at that building, they're about to get a shot, so they start screaming as you pull in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right?
You lied.
Because you lied. Right? You lied to them. Your behavior said, ooh, it's going to be okay. But no, it's really not. Because they're going to come in with a needle. Every time I walk in this office, they're going to come in with a needle. So I'm going to be in pain.
So if you're that person that's working in a corporation that really lacks integrity, you are not going to win being integral. You are going to win in that corporation being what that corporation is.
Well, that's a really good question. And I will respond by saying it depends. Because just like the leaders, their actions have to match the words, organizations have cultures. Organizations have heartbeats. And if the organization has continued to support people who operate with a lack of integrity, then yeah, the people with the lack of integrity are going to continue to succeed.
Wait a minute, St. Louis Sheriff just tuned in.
Good morning, St. Louis.
What is the young lady's name? I'm speaking of the press secretary. That is the press secretary. I forget.
I don't know.
Anyway, the girl that's always defending the president, and I said, as long as she is, she's good.
Right.
Because she's good with her wrong, meaning she's verbatimly repeating whatever she heard him say, and then she defends whatever is wrong. And if that's the type of person you want in your organization, then she would be considered successful?
She would be considered aligned with the culture.
Aligned with the culture. And anything that is opposite
go big or go home, it has a less likelihood of being successful.
In that particular
situation. And that's why you got to be honest about who you are and what you want. If you don't really want innovation, because innovation is costly and risky, then don't tell people to be innovative. And don't hire people who are creative and innovative, because they're not going to stay. They're going to be miserable, or worse yet, they will stay and they will lay down on the job. They will retire in place. And so you're getting very little productivity. You're getting very little return on your investment because you have taught people that innovation isn't really what you want. And it is easier for them and more comfortable for them to stay with the innovative they know than to try to find somewhere else. For some people. Especially in a market like this. All right? When the market is really tight, that's different. When the market is soft and people are trying to find something, they'll stay. And they'll stay and they will, as we say, retire in place. They'll just dial it in. They'll do enough so you cannot fire them. Without cause, anyway. If you're in Texas, they'll probably figure out something. But they'll do enough to be able to stay around. But you are not getting the best out of them. Because you have told them that their best is unwelcome.
But let's go back to this part. Can we recap that part when I said that the young lady that does my graphics will do what I asked her to do, and then also send me what she thought would be good. And 9 times out of 10, I said I liked her suggestion, but she did what I asked her to do. And so now I trust her because at least she's going to do what I asked her to do.
Right.
Even if I didn't even know I wanted what she was going to send me.
Exactly.
She gave me something to look at.
Yeah. Kaylee McEnany.
There it is. I'm glad you. I was looking at your mind like she's
thanks,
thinking.
Tisa. Yeah. No.
Oh.
My people sent it to me. I'm like, I don't know.
Okay.
I know she's blind. Last time I saw her, she had on a yellow dress. I don't
That's
know.
what I said.
Yeah.
But so you have to read those kind of people because a Kaylee McElhaney or whatever her name is would be good for somebody's organization.
Absolutely. That's the thing, people. You got to decide who you are and what you want, and you hire accordingly. You decide what your culture is going to be, and you hire accordingly. You just need to be honest with what you want and who you are. That's where it gets disconnected. If you don't want to be creative and innovative, then don't hire people who are creative and innovative.
Okay, let me ask you this. What is the narrative to this age-old excuse when the company says, listen, we're going to let you go because we're going in a different direction?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, that depends too. Sometimes that means we don't have enough money, we need to lay people off, and we can't tell you the truth. That's what it means sometimes, just being honest. Sometimes that's just... Tisa said, Jerry, I love you, girl. Sometimes it's just people not telling the truth. It is a lack of professional maturity and professional integrity, being able to say why we're really making the decision we're making. Sometimes it is your performance was really bad, but we don't have enough to tell you your performance is bad, but we're going to have to let you go. And sometimes it really is, you know what? We were making masks. Now we're going to be making cars. And the skills that you have to make masks do not translate into making cars. So we are definitely moving our business in a different direction. And unfortunately, your skills don't translate to that. Sometimes it's real. And I want to believe that 80% of the time, 80-20 rule, 80% of the time, it is real. That people have done the work. They have understood where they're going and what they need and how this person fits or does not fit into that movement.
I think in this climate with the pandemic and everything that's happened, I think that is a real statement. I had a conversation with a young man today, and I said, yes, you will be coming back when we get ready to open again.
Right.
But I'm going in a different direction. This direction is, I want it to be more news-based.
Yes.
I want you to be more current in what's going on and around the world. It's not going to be about a bunch of celebrity interviews and things of that nature, but something that is relevant to the times that we're in now. And so that is the concept of, you've had this time now to kind of rethink how you want to rebrand because we were building off an old brand. So how do you want to rebrand this? And we want to rebrand it as more of a news station.
Yes.
Giving that information around the world and more diverse.
Right. But here's the other thing about what you just said. That's leadership. You were just honest.
Yeah.
Not only did you say we're going in a different direction, but then you said, and here's what that direction is.
Okay, good.
Because what that does is, one, it puts them on notice. So if they really are coming back, they got to be ready.
Yeah.
But it also gives them an opportunity to say, "Ooh, you know what? But that's not the way I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to be all about celebrity interviews and fashion and food and all that kind of, that's where I want to go. So I know now that I need to be looking for something else." Right? But that's because you had the conversation.
Yeah.
And not only did you say, here's where we're going, but here's why we're going. You said the what and the why. And that's what makes good leaders. That's what makes and helps people to follow leaders, is that ability to be clear, that ability to be transparent, and that ability to come back and say, "Ooh, you know what? This is what I said I wanted, but when you delivered this to me, I guess I didn't really know what I wanted this time, because I really like what you sent." It's that ability to understand that there are times when we just don't know. We think we know, but we just don't know. And if presented with some other options, we may make a different decision.
And you have to be clear when you just said that, because I thought about that earlier on. I said, I cannot give you the plan right now because I don't know the plan, because the times are so flexible right now.
Yes.
Things are changing. And even right now, because we're looking at another lockdown.
I know.
So things are changing. Every day almost now.
Every day.
And so to say, this is the direction, yes, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, you can't probably say that right now.
It would be difficult.
Where you want to go.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and that's why we talk about have a strategy. But if you have that strategy and your strategy is clear, you have a foundation around which you can be flexible. But if you don't know where you're going, it's just chaos all the time. Everything. It's like, that shiny ball. I always call it shiny ball. People say it's a squirrel, right? Oh, there's a squirrel. There's a squirrel. Every time something new happens, you're chasing after the new thing because you aren't grounded in a direction and a strategy. But if you are grounded, you know where you're going, you know why you're going there. Then if some external information comes in and says, I need to make a change, you at least can look and say, okay, well, what does that mean? How much is it going to cost me? Is that something I'm even going to do? Or am I going to just decide, you know what? I'm going to be behind the 8 ball on this one. I'm just not making that change. It's not worth it to me. But you have had enough of a grounding in who you are and what you want, and enough vision about additional external information to be able to make a decision. You're not just chasing the next thing. So it's important for you as leaders, as business owners, to get grounded. Where are you going and why? And who do you need? And if you make a change, why are you making that change? And your answer may be, just because I want to. Well, okay. It's your business.
That's good.
But you need to understand the impact of you just saying, just because I want to. It's like, because I said so, right? Mama, why do we get, because I said so. Okay, well, I don't know what that means. Other than just because you said so. right? And that's why kids always ask, why, to the point where the parent says, because I said so. Because I'm tired of answering why. So one of the first questions we learn is why. We want to understand. So why is it that as we mature and we start working and we get into organizations, we forget to talk about why? And you look at all these books that are bestsellers. Start with why. What's your why? And I ask people why all the time. 5 whys, root cause analysis, right? But for some reason, we stop asking and stop answering why. Because as we continue to move up in organizations, when people ask us why, we see it as a threat to our leadership, a threat to our control, a threat to our ability to make decisions autonomously. And sometimes people just want to understand why. Because if they understand, then they can explain it to other people. Because as they say, if you can't explain it to somebody else, you don't know it well enough.
But is it a way you can ask why? Let's say you say, why are we doing that?
Well, yeah, that's a problem.
Okay. All right. I was just being hateful. Okay.
That's a problem. Okay. There is a way. There's a way to do everything with respect. And just like we've talked about performance discussions before, when you're having a performance discussion, you always talk about the behavior, not the person. This is the behavior I observed, which is not behavior that we want to see. Not, you did this and you are a bad person and you are incapable. See, that gets personal and that takes it to a whole different level. The behavior is observed specific behavior. Let's talk about this behavior that was exhibited and why this behavior is not appropriate and what we need to do to fix that behavior. Because I don't care if that behavior is really who you are. If you can pretend to be what I need you to be while you're here and exhibit what I need to have exhibited, okay. As long as you're not hurting anybody, you're not hurting yourself, you're not hurting me, you're not hurting the business. I don't care if you go off and do something completely different on your own time. As long as it's not illegal and it drags my business down. It's easier if your behavior is authentically you. Because then you don't have to try to keep that mask on and pretend.
You know what, though? When you just said that, though, in this COVID season, it could be dangerous, though, if your behavior is different than what you said. Because when you just mentioned about the mask, and we said it jokingly, I said, he can walk by here and he doesn't have a mask on, but when he comes see me, he'll put a mask on.
But he's still increased your risk. Because outside, and that's what I'm saying. I don't really care. I can't dictate. And this is where there's been a lot of litigation around too. People dictating what people can do after hours, right? Seeing what's on their Facebook page and they went to a party or they showed up somewhere and all this kind of stuff because they're working for a certain company, and does that ruin the reputation of the company? Those are very gray lines. Those are very gray lines. And so you can't necessarily dictate what someone does on their own time, on their personal time. However, there are things in clauses about credibility, about reputation that can hamper or ruin or somehow disturb the reputation of an organization. There are some kind of clauses and stuff that are written. But for the most part, what you need to be cognizant of is if your behavior outside of work is so risky that you put our organization or yourself or our other employees at risk, that's a different conversation. Now, and that kind of behavior you usually find out covertly.
Yes.
Usually somebody else is saying something to somebody else. Oh, did you see so-and-so and so-and-so and on their Facebook and on their Instagram and all that. Usually that kind of behavior is found out accidentally. Because people aren't trying to put all that out in the street most of the time.
So when is it, and I'm bringing it up because of the COVID situation, when is it policing someone or against their freedom? Let's say because like you have your mask on, I have my mask on. That's the rules of this place to make sure. And that's the rules of the city at this point. Right. And we were doing that before that. Right. But when is it against policy to say, okay, but you were moving around, you say you wear a mask and you're social distancing, and this is for the health of the business that you're doing this, and then it's found out that you're not doing this. Is that against the law?
So, no. Right now it's against some city ordinances here, right? You're not supposed to be out without a mask on in public spaces. You can, for your organization, as long as it is truly not illegal or discriminatory, you can put any rules you want in your place of business. You can put any rules you want in your place of business as long as it's not illegal, as long as it's not discriminatory, right? Or against some kind of regulation. You can do that. it is much more difficult to regulate what people do outside of your business.
Right.
But you can encourage, hey, look, guys, we're doing everything we can when you're in these four walls. But what you do outside of here impacts our ability to maintain safety. We respectfully request that you follow the city ordinances even when you're not here, for your protection and for the protection of those around you, right? Mm-hmm. You can put it on posters, you put it in emails, you can say it. You can't necessarily regulate it, but you can say it.
Mm. Sherry Duff in St. Louis says, thank you for always bringing on quality guests. You're actually a member of the home. This is your home. Yeah, you're not a guest. It's her own spot, but thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for being on St. Louis. Oh, see, we always do. Oh, right on time. It's 11 o'clock.
Hey.
So, here's the deal, y'all. Go vote. If you're in Texas, go vote, go vote, go vote. If you have not voted, please go vote. It's primary runoff election. Primary runoff election. So please go vote. Go study, see who it is, and go vote. Fill out your census. Make sure you're paying attention to unemployment. Follow those CDC, OSHA, DOL, and EEOC. And make sure your words are aligning with your actions this week. Just take a minute.
Can we ask a question? Do you have any suggestions
for
voting? Of who would you think would be good candidate for those?
So I know who I supported, but I try to be very neutral. Mm-hmm. Because I know a lot of people are very, very easily influenced. Mm-hmm. And so I have a problem with being one of the people that's influencing people. So I would say this. Pay attention to what people have actually said. So if you look at Royce West and MJ Hager, mm-hmm. go back and look at what they've done. Go back and look at policies they've put in place. Go back and look and how they have voted on things where they've been there. Go back and see what they have done, because they both have some history. Mm-hmm. See how that aligns with what they've been saying, and then vote. That's what I'll say.
She ain't telling us.
Educate yourself and then make a decision based on your conscience. Vote like your life depends on it, because it does. All right, y'all. Thank you. Next Tuesday. See ya.